Viewers on IETV, TT.com, and those listening on IE Radio, thank you for joining us once again on Hotline with Ann Dookie. Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says his administration will table legislation next year to dismantle the Services Commission. Now, we have 4 Services Commission. For those who don't know, we have the Police Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, Teaching Service Commission, and the Judiciary and Legal Service Commission. All of these are prepped to be dismantled. They are accused of underperforming, and as I always say, how long should we hamstring the public service sector? It is no secret that corruption and underperformance has been the table index for most ministries. And I say so without prejudice. Starting from the Bliss Prasad fiasco, with Dr. Rowley admittedly saying, yes, it was I who spoke to Miss Bliss at the time of that big fiasco with Gary Griffith and so on. Let's welcome former head of the PSA, Mr. Clyde Weatherhead. Mr. Weatherhead, welcome to Hotline, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, and to your audience, and thank you for having me.
Mr. Weatherhead, with Dr. Rowley wanting to dismantle the 4 Service Commission, is this dictatorship you give on one hand but you take away with the other?
Well, I don't know what he's given. The point is, this is the most bold attempt by any politician since independence to get rid of the service commissions as a whole. Before now, and Dr. Rowley would have been part of Mr. Manning's cabinet in 1993. They made an attempt to get rid of the Police Service Commission. The UNC did not support their Constitution Amendment Bill in 1993. But in 2001, the UNC tabled a similar Constitution Amendment Bill to try and get rid of the commission. And then in 2006, well, in fact, 2004, they tried again and it didn't succeed. But all of those 3 attempts were to deal with the Police Service Commission. In 2006, they went ahead, supported by the UNC. Again, Manning presented a Constitution Amendment Bill and a bill to amend the Police Service Commission, the Police Service Act, sorry. That was passed unanimously in both houses. And what that bill did was to reduce the Police Service Commission from having jurisdiction over the entire police service in terms of appointments, promotions, transfers, discipline, and terminations, to them having jurisdiction over 2 ranks of the police service, namely the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police.
So it is not independent. I say it's not independent then.
Well, it's not, because what the effect of what was done was that the commission no longer appoints, even the two offices, they no longer appoint the people there really. When I say they formally hand them a letter of appointment, but the decision as to who becomes the commissioner and deputy commissioners is with the politicians.
It is with the ruling party, or with the ruling party, so to speak.
Well, with the Prime Minister and his cabinet.
Which is the ruling party ultimately. So it is politicized.
And because the Prime Minister has a built-in majority in the lower house.
Of course.
Whatever he says goes.
What role the commission serve? Break it down to our viewers for those who don't understand. What is the purpose of the commission when it was first established?
Okay, well, let's deal with when it came about, right?
Yes.
Before independence, in 1953, the colonial secretary proposed that there be 2 service commissions. 1, the Police Service Commission, and 2, the Public Service Commission. And these commissions were to ensure that there will be no political interference in the appointments and so on to the public services generally, right?
Yes.
Before independence, the commissions were introduced, but they were included in the 1962 Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Rowley, in speaking to his party faithful at his family day in Toko,
Yes.
suggested that the purpose of the commissions was to insulate public officers from political interference in those areas of their appointment and so on, which is true, which is what was recognized by the Privy Council in the landmark case of Endel Thomas and the Attorney General back in 1982. So that was the fundamental position of having commissions, to insulate the public service from political interference. What Dr. Rowley added that day was to suggest that it was to prevent racial discrimination in the public services. And he is saying that because the myth is being presented by him and previously by Mr. Manning and others, that it was the DLB who demanded service commissions to be included in the 62 Constitution. In fact, the DLP called for an EBC to be present as an independent body. And I have in my possession a book which included a speech by Mr. James Manswell, General Secretary of the CSA, the Civil Service Association, which became PSA later, at the Queen's Hall consultation on the 1962 Constitution, in which he made the plea for the Service Commission to be included in the Constitution with that express purpose of insulating the public service from political interference.
Mr.
So
Webb.
the commissions.
Yes, go ahead.
The commissions, each of them has 5 powers. One is to appoint people to offices in the particular service. 2 is to transfer them. 3 is to discipline them. 4 is to promote them. And 5 is to terminate them. Those are the 5 powers of service commissions.
If this
What the politicians
yeah,
have always wanted is for them to have the right to hire and fire.
Fire, exactly.
Right? So when we say public service, in the law, the public service is not the civil service. Some people use the terms interchangeably.
They mix it up, yes.
Right? So the public service consists of all of those services: police, fire, prisons, teaching, civil service. All right?
Yes, you're correct.
So that is the public service. All right?
Yes.
And each of those services consists of offices which are defined in the particular act for each service. So for example, in the civil service, recently you would have seen that the Commissioner of State Lands won her case against the Service Commission and the Attorney General, right? Where they were attempting to dismiss her. And one of the reasons she succeeded was that her office is not included under the Civil Service Act as an office in the civil service. And therefore, the Service Commission has no authority to discipline her because she is not part of the civil service over which it exercises those 5 powers. So we have to be very careful. There are service acts, the Police Service Act, the Teaching Service Act, Civil Service Act, and Fire Service Act, and so on, which define the offices. In those acts also, because of Endel Thomas's case, what constitutes misconduct is negotiated between the CPO and the representative associations. So the Service Commission can charge you with misconduct, but it does not define what misconduct is. That is a matter for the executive, and therefore it is a negotiable matter between the associations and the executive. That is what Endel Thomas decided. So there are now codes of conduct under which, if you are to be facing a disciplinary charge, you are charged with a breach of that code of conduct or a specific pattern.
Without politician interference.
Without, yes. Now, let me just go back to something here. In 1993, when Manning tried first to get rid of the Police Service Commission with his Constitution Amendment Bill, which failed, the UNC didn't support it. The reason he wanted to get rid of the commission was because he tried to get the commission to remove Police Commissioner Jules Bernard for whatever reason he had in his mind, but he never made his reason clear to the commission. And therefore the commission said, we cannot retire him just so. We have to have a reason, and he has a right to be heard. But you haven't presented us with a reason. So what Manning tried then was to amend the Constitution to get rid of the Police Service Commission. Because the UNC didn't support it, and therefore the bill failed, right? And then Pandey came into office, and in 2001, he brought back a bill to do the same thing. And that also failed. And a third one failed in 2004. So because the prime ministers had a problem with Jules Bernard, the politicians had a problem with Jules Bernard, and the commission could not do the politicians' bidding because they didn't even have a real reason to say he should be removed. They then tried to get rid of the commission.
If Dr. Rowley bring this bill back to have complete control next year in 2024, do you think he will be successful? What are his chances?
Well, very minimal, because to succeed in removing a service commission, the sections of the Constitution which create the service commissions are entrenched in the Constitution, meaning that to amend them or to remove them, you have to have a two-thirds majority in both houses. So I don't think the government will succeed with this, but you never know, because in 2006, the UNC joined with the PNM to reduce the Police Service Commission to a recruiting agency. And they all voted unanimously for it, except I think for 2 senators.
Mr. Clyde, we always hear about the public service underperforming. If the country continued to hamstring the public service, why did we let it go so far?
Well, the problem is, just like in the history of this country, there have been many commissions of inquiry or committees set up to investigate the police service. And they've been saying since 1958 that the police service is inefficient, it is poorly managed, and they blame the commissions for that. Similarly, in the civil service, they talk about it is not well managed and so on. But who manages a service? In the case of the police, it is the Commissioner of Police, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, and that minister. In the civil service, you have managers at various levels, up to permanent secretaries. You have the CPO who deals with terms and conditions of employment. Mm-hmm. And you have the Minister of Finance who tells the CPO what the terms and conditions he can offer to the public or to the civil servants are. And he can refer any dispute to the special tribunal, which, as you know right now, all the services have been referred to the tribunal in respect of the negotiations from 2014 to 2019. So the management of the service is not what the commissions do. The commissions appoint, promote, transfer, discipline and remove people. And to do those things, you have to have performance appraisals done each year by the supervisors of the particular civil servant or public officer. So it is the management, the day-to-day management is in the civil service, the heads of department and supervisors and the PS and so on. In the police service, it is with the commissioner of police. He has control over thousands of police officers who the police service commission right now is only an appeal body from the decisions of the commissioner in terms of discipline and other things. So it has been, it's not even appointed any police officer below the rank of deputy commissioner. So it has been reduced to an appeal body.
Would we be free from political interference if all of these commissions came under a table under one body?
Well, let me put it this way. Service commissions are set up under the Constitution. If you're going to create a body, as they tried to do with those amendments in 93 and 2001, they wanted a police management authority, which would be appointed not by the president in the president's own decision, but by the politicians. So if you have such an authority, appointing people, first of all, how are they appointing people to a public office? So the people, this body that Prime Minister Rowley talks about, he wants a tribunal. He doesn't even explain what that is. But the closest thing we know to tribunal is the special tribunal, where you go to deal with disputes over pay and negotiating pay and terms and conditions and applying those conditions to public officers. So is this tribunal that Dr. Rowley spoke about at his family day, is that also to deal with disputes regarding appointment, promotion, and discipline, and so on, and replace commissions in terms of having those 5 functions? If that is the case, then why do you need a new tribunal? Why not expand the jurisdiction of the special tribunal that already exists? And is this body, because he said if the management do something, you could go to the tribunal, right? He said
yes,
that at
he
his family.
said that, yes.
So who is appointing you? Who is appointing the DPP or judges or legal officers under the JLSC if you remove the Service Commission? A tribunal that is going to hear the disputes. So then it cannot hear disputes if it is appointing people, because it cannot sit as a judge in its own court. So I don't know what it is the Prime Minister has in his mind, but it sounds like a convoluted nothing. Because if you have a body that is not as, right now, let us take the definition of a public officer. It is to be found in part in the Constitution and in the other part in the various service acts. So a public officer is someone appointed to a public office in a particular service by a service commission. So if you remove the service commission, who is going to appoint public officers to public offices in the various services?
Well, according to Dr. Rowley, he said he's going to put all these commission table it under one body.
Yeah, but he's calling that body a tribunal, and he said if the management do something, you could go to the tribunal. So he's not talking about appointing anybody. So is it that he's going to convert the whole public service into contract employees? Is that his intention? And if it is going to be contract employees, like you have contract employees, for example, in the civil service right now, right?
Yes.
And they are appointed by the permanent secretary and the CEO, right? the contract officers are not public officers. They don't occupy a public office, and they are not appointed by a service commission. They are workers under the IRA, right? So they don't go to the special tribunal for disputes with the CPO and so on. They go to the industrial court like every other worker in the country in the private sector. So is that what the Prime Minister is suggesting? That we must have a government service that is now consisting of workers appointed by various ministries and departments. Is that the case? Or as the judiciary is now doing, they're appointing all the non-judicial officers in the judiciary on contract. Is that what he's proposing?
You take the words out of my mouth. My next question was about the judicial and legal system. Why there are so many vacancies there that are not filled?
Well, it depends on where the JLSC, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, they are appointing judges, they are appointing the DPP, they are appointing legal officers in various ministries and departments, including the DPP's office, right? So they are appointing people from the courts to different ministries.
Into different ministries, yes. So they are short staff.
Right? So, for example, you heard the DPP complain he doesn't have enough staff.
Yes.
Staff, right? But he doesn't appoint them. The commission appoints some of them, and if you want them on contract, they will have to be contracted with the permanent secretary of the AG's office. So, if you remove the JLSC, who is going to appoint judges to the court? Is it the politician? Who is going to appoint the DPP, which is an independent office under the Constitution? Is it the politicians? Who is going to do that?
Only Dr. Rowley can answer that. Let's take a short commercial break, viewers and Mr. Weatherhead. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the Prison Service Commission and the special tribunal hearing the negotiation disputes that took place on Thursday, May 4th. We'll be right back. Hello. Join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie every Monday at 1 to 2 p.m. The thing with this coronavirus is we had to push away the ones we love the most. We had to watch our families dwindle. We have seen infection rates rising. People are reluctant to get vaccinated. But wait, this is where the doctors come in. Then we had to face rising food prices every day. Most of you will agree we have been challenged. It's time we make the policies to set the agenda. Join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie, Mondays from 1 to 2 p.m. live on IETV and iRadioTT.com. See you there. Viewers, welcome back to Hotline with Ann Dookie with Mr. Clyde Weatherhead, where we are discussing Dr. Rowley aimed to dismantle the four main commissions that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is the Prison Service Commission, the Police Service Commission, Public Service Commission, the Teaching Service Commission, and the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. Mr. Weatherhead, before we went to the break, I said, you know, there were some negotiation disputes recently where there was a ruling for 2 5-year period, 2014 to 2018 and 2019 to 2023 on negotiation disputes. This would mean that there would be no negotiation for the prison service for 10 years. Based on this ruling, the POA decided to withdraw the 4% matter at the special tribunal. What does this really mean? Break it down for our viewers.
All right, let's take the process.
Yes.
Negotiations in the public services are between the CPO and the recognized associations for each service. All right?
Yes.
So either the CPO presents proposals or the association presents proposals. The Minister of Finance then tells the CPO, if he's going to present proposals, these are what you should propose, right? Or if you're responding to them, these are your counter proposals, okay?
Yes.
If there's no agreement, either party can refer the dispute to the Minister of Finance. And he has 21 days in which he's not required to do anything. And if the dispute is still not resolved, he can send it to the tribunal, or the association could send it to the tribunal. So the Minister of Finance is telling the CPO, this is what you could propose to the associations. If you don't agree, bring the dispute to me. I have nothing to do, and then I will send it down the road. So once it reaches the minister, more or less it's automatic that it goes to the special tribunal. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The special tribunal can then have a hearing and make an award. But they can make an award for a minimum period of 5 years. So what is before the tribunal now is really two disputes. One over 2014, which is 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
And then the other one is 17, 18, 19,
19,
right?
yes.
Right. So what the CPO argued before the tribunal is, here you have two disputes. So you are allowed to award a 5-year award for each of those disputes. Literally, it would mean a 10-year award, right? So the tribunal then accepted that position. And therefore, the Prison Service Association was in a bind. If we get 10 years, it means we can't even negotiate for the period between 2020 and 2023, because the 10 years would cover them, right? So I hear them say they withdrew the matter. They couldn't withdraw anything because they didn't send any dispute to the court. It is only the CPO who could who is there on his behalf through the Minister of Finance, and he could withdraw it, but not the association. So what they did is they accepted the CPO's position, which is the 4%, and some increases in some allowances. So basically, what TUTA, the Fire Officers Association, what they face is the same kind of thing. Either 10 years or accept the 4%.
So it's your money or your life. It's your money
Yes.
or your life.
But that's why I put a post on Facebook and I headed it, your money or your life.
Yes, that's why I said so. I saw it. This is the same government who Prime Minister is talking about abolishing the Services Commission and establishing
Yes.
a tribunal to protect the public officers against management refusing to hire them, transferring them, and taking unfair disciplinary action against them or dismissing them.
Yeah. Well, in any case, there's the special tribunal which exists right now, where these disputes are, is dealing with terms and conditions and application of those terms. So why would you want another tribunal to deal with that? The industrial court deals with everything in terms of employment relations.
Exactly.
So what he's talking there is a mystical thing about a tribunal to deal with what used to be under the commissions rather than what is under the CPO. And by the way, you know, the public service is the only place where you have an HR function that is split between two bodies. I'm sure in your television organization there's an HR department.
Of course.
Right? So it deals with promotions, appointments, etc., as well as it deals with terms and conditions. But in the public service, those things are split between the commission and the CPO. So it is a complex thing, but at the same time, the improvement even in the work of the commissions. I remember when I was president of the PSA, people think that you can't be dismissed as a public officer, which is not true. Right?
Yeah, they
People
think
have been
they think they have a job for life.
Yeah, but you can be disciplined once a proper procedure is followed.
Followed, of
Similarly,
course.
in the private sector, you think a boss could just get up and fire people just so? If you go to the go and look in the industrial court, the majority of its decisions have to do with dismissals, which are unfair. So similarly, the same basic principles apply in the public service.
Everything
Except
follows a
that,
process, and the evidence
yeah.
is there to show.
And what I suggested to the prime ministers, because I was there between when Manning was there and when Pandey came in, and we suggested to both of them, here are some ways to improve the disciplinary process in the civil service. And only one of those things, which we suggested that they should have permanent tribunals, that is the only thing that has been implemented, and that was many years later. So one of the things you have is an investigating officer has to be appointed to investigate allegations against you. But who is an investigating officer? It is another civil servant or so, right?
Yes.
Of a higher rank. But they have no training in investigating anything. So the closest thing to what we suggested was to have an independent group of industrial relations investigators, is what they call the PSAB in the police service, right? The Professional Standards Bureau, right? But in the civil service, in the fire service and so on, there are no trained investigators to investigate industrial relations complaints in terms of this. And that continues to be so. So there's always a difficulty with investigations and so on. And therefore these things, despite that there are timetables in the regulations, some of these things get kept back because investigators keep asking for extension at time, or they don't investigate properly and things like that. So it is a matter of improving the functioning of what is under the commissions. There's a whole personnel department in terms of the DPA's office that services the commission. The commission is, in some cases, is part-time people meeting a couple times a month. They don't go and work out who is on a merit list and who should be promoted, and all of those things come through performance evaluation and should be coming through the permanent secretaries and so on, making recommendations. So the real management of the services takes place below the level of the service commission. And that is what needs to be strengthened. And if you know the civil service, with the amount of contract people that they have inside it, the public officers are having a hard time trying to manage the service because the contract people are doing whatever they are asked to do, regardless of what the regulations.
I have noticed, yes, in employment opportunities, when they advertise it, there are a lot of contract positions within the ministry for hire, more and more every day, compared to what you would have seen 10 years ago.
Well, right now, some ministries have as much as 75 or 80% of their staff are on contract. Not public officers appointed by a commission. So over the years, since 1981, coming up the road, every government that has come to power has been using contract employment in the public service more and more and more. Because it is one of the ways they could narrow down the amount of people that the service commissions have control over in terms of appointing them and so on. And therefore it gives the politician an opportunity to have more control over who is hired in the government service.
Is this the same for the Teaching Service Commission?
Well, there are some positions in teaching service
I see they have a lot of
that are
vacancies.
on contract.
Mr.
They what?
Weatherhead,
Sorry?
I said the Teaching Service Commission, I have observed that they have a lot of vacancies. They have core human resource problem and they have a lot of vacancies to fill. And as the row develop with the denominational schools over the fair selection for primary school teachers.
Yeah.
Yes, that row is ongoing.
Well, the thing is, with the denominational schools, the boards have a say in who gets appointed, right? And with the government schools, with any position in any public service, the commission cannot appoint somebody unless the person can be paid. So if the Ministry of Finance does not provide the funds to pay a public officer, how is the commission going to appoint them? So they will go to work and don't get paid? So in that way, the politicians also have a control by not providing the funds for a public office position. The commission cannot appoint anybody. And there's what is now being called suppression of public office positions, so that people are hired on contract rather than in a public office. So I keep hearing the Prime Minister talking about gazetted public officers. He means those appointed by the commission. He said we didn't send how many of them during the pandemic. But I know of some contract officers who were sent home.
And was it fair? Was it fair to them? Did they have any right to fight that position?
Well, they would have had to go through the industrial court because they are workers under the IRA and they're not public officers. So, and if you look at the industrial court records over the last few years, you'll see more and more disputes involving contract employees in the public service going to the industrial.
Staying away from our main conversation, Mr. Weatherhead, what is our public sector debt today? Our debt? Yes, our debt. What is it today?
I'm not sure the exact figures, but...
my researcher was saying 2.50%. That's the annual growth rate, right?
But that's a percentage of GDP?
Yes. So I'm asking, what is our public sector debt? Because that ties in with our public officers.
Well, the public sector debt as a percentage of GDP is a ratio, is a percentage. So the actual figure will depend on what the actual debt is, and that ratio will depend on what that debt is as against what the GDP is. So the debt, if you recall, you remember when they had cut public officers' pay under the NAR by 10%, and they had suspended increments. The reason they said for that was that they had an inescapable obligation to pay the public debt. And under the present PNM administration, the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister particularly keeps reminding us that we have inescapable obligations to meet, part of which, a large part of which, is the debt and debt servicing. So if you spend any money on paying off the public debt, then you will not be approving money for appointments to the public services. So it ties in.
The Police Service Commission, right now we would say it is in a state of chaos. How would we fix that? What would you suggest?
Well, what I would suggest is that the commission, first of all, this appointment of commissioner and deputy commissioners needs to be removed from the parliament. That function needs to be restored to the commission. And if the commission remains only with 9 offices under it, remember those same powers of appointment, transfer, promotion, discipline, and termination were removed from the commission and given to the Commissioner of Police under the 2006 legal amendments so that the Commissioner of Police has jurisdiction over thousands of officers, and the commission remains with only about 9 people under it. So you remember when with Iwatsky and they were here?
Yeah.
The commission asked the commissioner for a report, which he's supposed to give them. But I imagine him saying, well, I have control of thousands of people, you have control over 9 of us. I ain't getting you no report, and he never did. So that is the mess they created in 2006. And that mess can only be corrected if the commission is restored to properly selecting and appointing the Commissioner of Police and deputies. And there has to be independence from the Prime Minister being able to attempt to
for
tell
political
the
interference. You took the words
Yes.
out of my mouth. We need a commission that is free from chaos and free from political interference. Let's take a short commercial break, and when we come back, the final part of our show, we will continue this talk on Police Service Commission, and I want to talk a bit on crime and all this big talk and symposium at the Hyatt. What did it mean? We'll be right back. Hello, join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie every Monday at 1 to 2 p.m. The thing with this coronavirus is we had to push away the ones we love the most. We had to watch our families dwindle. We have seen infection rates rising. People are reluctant to get vaccinated. But wait, this is where the doctors come in. Then we had to face rising food prices every day. Most of you will agree we have been challenged. It's time we make the policies to set the agenda. Join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie, Mondays from 1 to 2 p.m. live on IETV and iRadioTT.com. See you there. Welcome back, viewers, to Hotline with Ann Dookie with Mr. Clyde Weatherhead, former head of the PSA, the Public Service Association. Welcome back, Clyde. All this big talk we had and nice videos and shootouts at the, no pun intended, at the Hyatt, and a big symposium on crime. We need more than talk when neighborhoods are not safe. People are afraid to even sit out in their yard or in the balcony. They're afraid if they are sitting outside, they could get shot. And there's a lot of big talk and no action. What are your comments on this?
Well, let me put it this way. People are afraid to be in their house. First of all, you don't have to be on your balcony or in your yard. You remember the case of this lady? She came from exercising and she's walking out of her bedroom and she was shot and killed. They say by some stray bullet, right?
Yes.
Or you have the case where 5 or 6 bandits invade your house,
Storm your
beating you up,
home.
roughing you up and killing you, right? So you don't have to leave your house to be in danger. You don't have to be involved in any underground or illegal activity to be in danger. You could be just walking down the street and somebody decided shooting at somebody. Look at what happened at Karachet Beach, down at La Brea. Right? Guys came there, they shoot up the place, or they went to a birthday party in Temple Street in Arima, shoot up the place, and it's going on and on. So that, I don't know if you recall, just about 2 buildings away from the Konopia police station, at a bar on the side of the main road. A guy came up there and he shot people, that killed one of them, and people in the area saying, well, kill the wrong man, and, you know. But this was literally 2 buildings away from the police station that this happened on the main road. So people are justifiably fearful and concerned that their right to safety and security is not being protected. And who is to protect that right? You can't tell me is Is the government to protect our rights to different things, our right to health and health services and so on. But when it comes to protecting our right to safety and security, it is not the government's responsibility. So they say it's the police responsibility, is not the minister, is not the government. But have you read the manifestos of these political parties every election?
Oh yeah, every election, yes. They promise you the moon.
In 2015, the PNM had several pages of
On
their
crime, yes.
manifesto. And they said, we will make the commissioner permanent and we have all these other things to do. But when those things do not prevent us from having a rising murder toll, they say, well, excuse me, not we, it's the commissioner. You know, we're not responsible.
The Commissioner of Police, she have promised to decrease the murder rate by June. June is just a blink away.
Yeah. So I asked them the other day on Facebook, can the commissioner keep us updated on her progress? And somebody said to me in response, so you want the lady to fail? I said, no, the lady is a public officer holding a public position. She has a key role in law enforcement. And public officers are to account to us as the citizens. Do you know, Ms. Duki, when you go back over the statistics, that we are approaching 10,000 people killed in this country between 1994 and now? Yes. 10,000?
Yes, yes.
Where are we in Ukraine? Are we in Sudan? Are we in Yemen? Are we in Palestine? We have no war going on here, but 10,000 people dead between 1994 and now. So the question is, our right to safety and security has to be protected by the government, by the state, like every other right. So you can't excuse that away. And you can't simply put a commissioner of police there and say, well, I could try and get rid of them if I didn't like them or some kind of thing like that. Or I could have some complaint against them and try and get rid of them. That's not how it works. The government needs to talk to us. The symposium that was held the other day, what the 15 points that came out of it, the simplest one was this CARICOM arrest warrant treaty to be incorporated into our law, right?
Yes.
There has to be an act to incorporate it in our law. And most of the Caribbean countries have not done it. So they said at the symposium, there's a high priority thing, we can all do it. I think one country since then, I think maybe St. Lucia, has done it. But there's no bill coming to our parliament to do that. But then we end up with the Brent Thomas fiasco and somebody being kidnapped or abducted in Barbados and brought here. Or to use the American term, extracted. Because when the Americans send the CIA into our country and they pick up somebody and carry them back to the States, they call it an extraction.
Extraction, yes.
But we have an extradition treaty with Barbados. There's no extradition of that person. He's held by the Barbados police and then put on an RSS plane, and we are not part of the RSS, and brought to Trinidad. So what was that? It can be an extradition. I hear some news reports still referring to it as the extradition of Brenton. There was no extradition. There wasn't even an application to extradite. So we cannot have that kind of thing happening when you have a big Caribbean symposium and the simplest thing that you say should be done, you haven't done.
It's not done. You talk about the manifestos. Just to remind our viewers, I have here the PNM manifesto. You remember the 10-point crime plan? To appoint a commissioner of police, manpower audit. They promise more stability for the municipal police, to improve the police complaints authority and parliamentary oversights. Have any of that been done? Anti-gang legislation. to improve the Caribbean Court of Justice and witness tampering offense. Is it more of the same? You just talk. Mr. Weatherhead, over to you.
That is 2015.
Yeah.
That is 8 years we're talking about. So what have they accomplished? That they appoint a commissioner of police? Well, now 2.
That is why I take the viewers back, so they will see that there was no change. Then it's just talk and talk. What role should the religious leaders play, Mr. Weatherhead, in encouraging their congregation not to get involved in crime? Can they play a role, or should they step up, seeing where crime is concerned right now in Trinidad and Tobago?
One of the problems that has contributed to the criminal activity in this country is the fact that our society is undergoing social and cultural decay. And this is not now, this is many years, at least 2 decades. And the religious leaders and others, even the cultural artists and so on, and cultural activists, who are the ones that should be promoting uplifting culture and thinking among the people, have failed us badly. I don't know that some church could suddenly turn around now and fix what they haven't done for 20, 30 years. Nor can anybody else. So that when the government talks about a whole of society approach and so on, remember they used to, after that 2015 manifesto, when they came into office, they said, we're going to have a whole of government approach. I didn't hear them say a whole of commissioner approach. It was a whole of government approach. But when your whole of government approach does nothing, you say, well, it's not our responsibility, it's the commissioner approach. Similarly, you're saying, well, the religious people need to be doing more now. But when you have social decay in your society, it is a matter for the state and for the society as a whole, not just some particular group, to address these things. And we have not been addressing them.
And you talk about social decay, Clyde. It starts from the schools, you know. Violence starts from in the schools, where children today, they have simply no respect for each other or for the elders.
No, well, it doesn't start in the school in that sense. It is all over the society. You see, social relations in a society are not in the school, they're all over. And if our relations are such, look, there was a case quite a few years ago in Tunapuna. There's the traffic light just about 100 meters away from the police station or less. And there was a little fender bender thing, 2 cars hit near the traffic light. And one guy came out, in fact, the guy who was wrong, and pulled a cutlass out of his car and chopped the next man hand off. Oh, that's years ago. So this thing is not a recent phenomenon. And I am pointing out to people, the question of drugs, in terms of the mass use of illicit drugs in this country, started in 1970 as a reaction to the 1970 uprising. That is the first time we heard about MX and cocaine and thing coming into this country, right? In 1970 itself, towards the end of the year. And there were the Woodstock parties and all of these things where all these drugs started to infiltrate the country. So I am saying that was part of the reaction to the protest of what is called the 1970 revolution. That part of the state and the ruling classes in this society say, well, we had to get these young people off this revolution thing. So one of the ways was drugs. And I don't know if you were wrong in those days, but at that time, after April 1970, you had the Peace Corps coming from the United States, you had Hare Krishna, you had Children of God, you had all manner of things flowing into this country, junior achievement and all these things, trying to get the minds of the youth off of this notion of revolution. And part of that was to expand or to introduce the mass scale use of drugs in this country. It started then. So when we reach now in 2023 and 10,000 people dead after 1994, I've heard people try to blame it on the coup, blame it on all kinds of things. But our society is decaying. Our social relations are destructive and destroying us. We no longer have civility among people. And that is not a problem for the church alone. That's a problem for all of us. And we are not dealing with that. So if you have extreme poverty and oppression in a society, civility breaks down. The family has broken down in the society decades ago, it's not now. I hear people talking about children making children. But you go back to the 1940s and 50s and so on. Weren't most people getting married before 20 and having their children?
Yes,
So
they were.
This woman who was killed by the savannah recently, having 5 children at the age of 25. You go back 2 generations of your family, how many of them did not have children by the age of 25? They would have had several children. So we are making excuses rather than dealing with the breakdown of our society, because our economic relations and our social relations as a result are not good.
My last question to you, we have just about 2 or 3 minutes again on the program. We have spoke about drugs and its implication. Would a nationwide search for illegal drugs and ammunition, would it help to improve the crime situation?
Well, it may help, but how are you going about it? Are you going to issue search warrants to search the whole country? Or the only other way you can do that is impose a state of emergency.
Well, that is one suggestion by a viewer to, yes, have search warrants to search for these illegal ammunitions.
You can't go searching everybody's house with a search warrant. You have to have probable cause. And one of the things that came out in the Brent Thomas case is that those warrants were illegally obtained.
If we should increase the fines for illegal ammunition, would it
But we
help?
have increased them you know what fines are now compared to 20 years ago. I mean,
The problem goes on and on, yes, it's more of the same.
They have a formula in the Attorney General's office. Every time they have a new bill with some offense, they have a formula now how to increase the penalty.
The penalty.
But increasing the penalty is not solving anything.
Mr. Weatherhead, we are out of time, unfortunately. I'm enjoying this talk with you. We'll have to continue it another day. Thank you for your view, yes, on the Public Services Commission and the Prime Minister, yes, suggestion to dismantle it. And we moved on to talk about crime, which is affecting everyone. Beyond the east, the sunrise, beyond the west, the sea, and east and west, the wanderlust that will not let me be. Gerald Good. I am Ann Dookie. Thank you for joining me.